imagine sitting in this highly secure, incredibly tense courtroom. The prosecution stands up, points directly at the defendant, and demands this grueling 12-year prison sentence for what they're literally calling the biggest espionage case since World War II.
I mean, the atmosphere in a room like that is just incredibly heavy. You're fully expecting the hammer of justice to come down hard.
Exactly. But then the judge delivers the verdict and, well, the suspect essentially walks out of the courtroom a free man, sentenced to just 20 months of time he's already served.
It is a staggering contradiction to witness. I mean, you go from this ultimate catastrophic betrayal of the state to what basically amounts to a judicial slap on the wrist for, poor administrative hygiene.
Yeah, poor hygiene is one way to put it.
It forces you to ask whether the justice system is broken or if the intelligence apparatus simply, overplayed its hand.
When I was reading through the journalistic breakdown of this exact case in The Telegraph recently, the thing that kept jumping out at me wasn't just the alleged espionage. It was the bizarre, administrative and legal failures that allowed this whole paradox to happen in the first place.
Totally.
So today's deep dive is focused on the trial of a man known as Abdel L, or sometimes APLM. He was one of the absolute top intelligence analysts in the Dutch government.
Yeah, a massive figure.
And our mission today is to sift through the almost cinematic details of his downfall. We want to understand a very specific systemic problem, which is the delicate and, frankly, often contradictory intersection of national security, secret intelligence, and the rigid demands of a public legal system.
Right, because those worlds just do not mix well.
They really don't.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to figure out how a suspected master spy just, walks free, we first have to look at the bureaucratic friction that defined his entire career.
Right, and to understand that friction, we have to look at how Abdel L actually fit into the Dutch security apparatus. Because you have the AIVD.
The AIVD, right.
Yeah, the AIVD handles active human intelligence, foreign operations, the actual spies on the ground. But Abdel worked for the NCTV.
Which is the National Coordinator for Security and Counterterrorism.
Exactly.
And since we know the AIVD handles the active intelligence gathering, the NCTV's role is, it's different. The source notes, they were set up around 2004, right after 9/11, and the murder of Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh.
Right.
They're the synthesizers. They take the raw intelligence, analyze the threats, and turn it into actionable domestic policy and safety measures.
Precisely. I mean, they are supposed to be the desk analysts, not the field operatives. But Abdel L was there right from the inception of the NCTV.
Yeah.
He was incredibly embedded. And what's crucial to understanding his specific value is his background. He's of Moroccan descent, now in his 60s, and was known to be deeply critical of the Moroccan regime.
Right. He even claimed that his own cousin was allegedly murdered by Moroccan intelligence.
Yes.
Which makes the later accusation that he was spying for Morocco incredibly jarring to anyone just, looking at the surface facts.
It totally contradicts his public stance.
Right. But long before those suspicions, he was an absolute legend in the office. The source material says colleagues literally nicknamed him Ab Formation.
Ab Formation, yeah.
His information network regarding radicalization was so vast and so accurate that friend and foe agreed the Netherlands would have looked very different without him.
Oh, absolutely.
There's even a claim that controversial, highly targeted politicians like Geert Wilders owe their lives to Abdel's unique intelligence gathering.
And this right here is where the systemic vulnerability begins. When you have an analyst with that level of competence, it creates a very dangerous dynamic.
How so?
Well, in intelligence circles, brilliant analysts often build their own informal fiefdoms of information. They cultivate sources that only they know.
Oh, I see.
They connect dots that others can't see, and as a result, they become entirely indispensable.
But wait, I'm struggling with the logistics of that kind of power. Operating in a gray zone is one thing, but becoming completely siloed is another.
Right.
It sounds like he was the IT guy who holds the master passwords to the entire company. But if you're that valuable, do the normal rules just stop applying to you?
Basically, yes.
How does a guy with this much clearance suddenly become a suspect? Because since we know the AIVD handles active human intelligence and the NCTV synthesizes policy, Abdel was effectively bridging a gap he wasn't supposed to, right? He was applying field agent tradecraft from a policy desk.
He was, and that is exactly the bureaucratic friction you mentioned earlier. He was operating across lanes.
Yeah.
And for a long time, his superiors just tolerated it because the intelligence he provided was simply too good to pass up.
Wow.
But when an analyst becomes a silo, they become incredibly difficult to manage or even audit. The oversight mechanisms start to break down because, honestly, no one wants to interrupt the flow of golden intelligence.
Which brings us to the timeline where that untouchable status finally begins to crack. According to the trial records, around 2022 and into 2023, the whisters started.
Right, the internal rumblings.
Colleagues began questioning his integrity, reporting a strange, quote-unquote, vibe, and raising red flags about his working methods.
Yeah.
But his reaction to those whispers is what really accelerates the timeline. He claimed he felt unsafe at the office because of these rumors, so he asked his superiors if he could just work from home.
And that seemingly mundane HR request initiated a pattern of behavior that eventually brought the AIVD, the actual spy catchers, right to his doorstep.
Surveilling one of their own country's top counterterrorism experts.
Exactly. And the pattern they observed was methodical and highly concerning. Abdel was printing massive amounts of classified documents at the office.
Okay.
He was taking those printed pages home. Then he was scanning those documents onto USB sticks.
Scanning them back into a digital format.
Yes. And following that digitizing process, he would travel to Morocco.
He took 9 trips to Morocco in a single year.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I mean, I barely take 9 trips to the grocery store in a month. And when his role changed at work and he lost his authorization to print these highly classified documents, he didn't stop.
No, he didn't.
He actually used a colleague's print pass to keep the flow of documents going. And the scale of what he took is almost impossible to visualize. The authorities calculated that the terabytes of data he had hoarded were the equivalent of 11.5 billion A4 pages.
It's an astronomical amount of data.
I have to push back here, though. How does someone siphon the equivalent of 11.5 billion pages of data before IT flags him? Wouldn't the top counterterrorism analyst's digital footprint be like the most monitored in the entire building?
You would certainly think so, and that points to a massive failure in internal auditing at the NCTV. But the physical reality of his hoarding was even more baffling than the digital blind spots.
Really?
Yeah. The prosecution stated that these documents were not locked in some high-tech biometric safe hidden behind a bookshelf or something.
Where were they?
They were scattered casually all over his house. There were state secrets sitting on his nightstand. There were documents piled in the attic. There were even classified files found near the printer in his children's bedrooms.
In his kids' bedrooms. That's insane. Which leads to his defense in court.
Right?
When confronted with this staggering breach of protocol, Abdel, who, by the way, presented in court, is impeccably dressed, charismatic, and highly articulate, he claimed that he had permission.
Yeah, he threw his bosses under the bus.
He stated that his bosses, including former Prime Minister Dick Scoof, who previously headed the NCTV, knew he took work home and actively allowed it.
A claim those bosses obviously denied behind closed doors.
Right, of course. But then Abdel offered an even more absurd excuse. He claimed he was just a hoarder.
Oh yeah, the hoarding defense?
He literally joked in court that if there was a reality TV show called Help, My Husband is a Hoarder, his wife would have signed him up. Here's where it gets really interesting for me. I can understand blurring work and life, but if you look at the sheer scale of the data, 11.5 billion pages, you have to ask yourself, at what point does hoarding just become a convenient cover story for espionage?
What's fascinating here is the sheer tension between extreme operational sloppiness and actual malicious intent.
Right.
Because leaving state secrets on a nightstand or in a child's bedroom is the absolute opposite of elite spycraft. It's reckless, it's practically negligent.
Yeah, it looks terribly sloppy.
But on the other hand, the AIVD tracked a very distinct sequence. Print the documents, scan them to a USB, and fly to Morocco. They call this a leapfrog pattern.
A leapfrog pattern.
Right. In the intelligence world, that sequence of actions looks practically identical to classic spy tradecraft. You acquire the asset in a secure environment, you digitize it for discrete transport, and you physically deliver it across borders to avoid digital interception.
Wow. And the AIVD clearly believed they were watching spycraft, not a hoarding compulsion. They see the leapfrog pattern, they track the 9 flights, and on October 26, 2023, they make their move. Abdel is at Schiphol Airport. He's already passed customs, heading for his flight to Morocco.
Yep.
The authorities arrest him, search his baggage, and they find over 250 state secrets of varying classifications right there in his luggage.
And the investigation post-arrest revealed even more alarming details that seemed to confirm the AIVD's worst fears.
The phone, right.
Yes. When they analyzed his phone, they found he had been in ongoing contact with Moroccan intelligence, specifically a high-ranking officer named Kamal.
A literal foreign intelligence officer.
Exactly. And Abdel hadn't just saved Kamal's number openly, it was saved under various fake names and aliases in his contacts.
Which is so incriminating. When the prosecution pressed him on this in court, asking the obvious question, why are you secretly texting a high-ranking foreign intelligence officer under an alias? Abdel's answers were incredibly vague.
Very vague.
He claimed Kamal just worked for the land registry, the cadastre, and that he was simply helping Abdel sort out some bureaucratic issues with a family house in Morocco.
It's an explanation that severely stretches credulity, especially given the established identity of the contact.
Yeah, nobody's buying that.
And this is exactly why the prosecution swung for the fences, demanding that 12-year prison sentence. They looked at the hoarding, the trips, the USB sticks, the contacts with foreign agents under assumed names, and they concluded they had caught a master spy red-handed.
But the judge didn't buy it. Or rather, legally, the judge couldn't buy it.
Right.
The sentence handed down was just 20 months. And since Abdel had already sat in pretrial detention for exactly 20 months, that sentence meant he could just walk out the door. He was free.
Yep, walked right out.
Because, as the judge pointed out, despite all the highly suspicious behavior, there was no smoking gun.
None at all.
There were no surveillance photos of him actually handing a USB stick to Kamal in Morocco. There were no missing USB drives recovered by agents abroad. And most importantly, for establishing a motive, there was absolutely no trace of mysterious cash.
Right. No hidden assets, no sudden wealth traced back to him.
So what does this all mean? To you or me or anyone sitting on a jury, this looks completely absurd. It's like the cops catching you holding the blueprints to a bank and standing outside the vault. But because they didn't see you actually grab the cash, you get off on a technicality.
That's a great way to look at it.
Did the AIVD just bungle this by arresting him too early at the airport? Put yourself in their shoes. Should they have let him fly to Morocco and physically watched the handoff to get the proof they needed?
That question strikes at the eternal dilemma of counterintelligence, which is known as the equities issue.
The equities issue.
Yeah, the primary directive of an intelligence agency isn't to win court cases, it's to protect state secrets.
Oh, I see.
If you wait for the physical handoff to happen in a foreign country, you might secure the conviction, but you lose control of the state secrets. They fall into foreign hands.
Right.
But if you arrest early at the airport to secure the documents, you sacrifice the hard evidence of the transfer.
That makes total sense from an intelligence perspective, but it creates a massive problem in a courtroom.
It creates an insurmountable problem. We have to look at how the legal standard of beyond a reasonable doubt clashes with intelligence protocols.
Right.
In counterintelligence, evidence often relies on classified intercepts. Maybe it's a Pegasus spyware infection on a target's phone, or a highly sensitive foreign wiretap.
Stuff they can't talk about.
Exactly. Those methods are highly classified. They cannot be entered into public court records without burning the method and alerting every other spy in the world to how the AIVD operates.
Wow.
Therefore, prosecutors are forced to fight with one hand tied behind their backs. They have to leave their best classified evidence out of the courtroom and rely only on unclassified circumstantial evidence.
Like the leapfrog pattern.
Right. And in a functional democracy, circumstantial evidence like a leapfrog pattern simply isn't enough to lock a man away for 12 years for high treason.
But the lack of evidence from the prosecution was matched by an equally frustrating lack of explanation from the defense.
Oh, completely.
You have this highly articulate, charismatic analyst on the stand. Why couldn't he just explain what he was really doing with those USB sticks? Why stick to the absurd hoarder and land registry stories?
Well, the answer to that lies in the incredibly shadowy rules of his employment.
His defense lawyer, Bart Nuggedacht, summarized this dilemma with a brilliant and honestly chilling phrase. He told a court, "My client doesn't just work with state secrets, he is a state secret."
Which is such a powerful statement.
That line is just wild to think about, because it wasn't just dramatic lawyer rhetoric. During the trial, Abdel was effectively gagged by his own NCTV employment contracts.
Right.
He was explicitly, legally forbidden from explaining the modus operandi of his work, or discussing his colleagues, or detailing the methods he used to gather intelligence.
Yeah.
The state was simultaneously demanding answers from him while legally forbidding him from giving them.
And the stakes for breaking that silence were implied to be incredibly high. During the trial, Abdel revealed a terrifying detail about his 20 months in pre-trial detention.
Yeah, this part was crazy.
He stated that he was placed in a cell right next to a highly dangerous inmate, a situation that put his life in severe jeopardy.
Which forces you to wonder, was that just a massive administrative error by the prison system? Or was that a dark, unspoken warning from the intelligence community to keep his mouth shut?
It really makes you wonder.
The journalist who covered this case, WWII, strongly suspects that Abdel was never in a position to show the back of his tongue, which is a Dutch expression meaning he can never reveal his true motives or the whole truth.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look beyond the binary of rogue spy versus innocent hoarder. We have to consider alternative explanations that neither the prosecution nor the defense could possibly state in open court. What if Abdel was actually acting as an unofficial liaison between Dutch and Moroccan intelligence?
Let's explore that. Because historically, intelligence agencies use these gray zone back channels all the time.
Right. All the time. Countries often have complex, unacknowledged relationships. What if the sharing of certain lower-level administrative information was a sanctioned, albeit highly classified, strategy by the Dutch to gain access to Moroccan intelligence networks regarding radicalization?
Like you give a little, get a lot.
Exactly. If Abdel was operating a sanctioned back channel, applying that field agent tradecraft from his policy desk with a wink and a nod from his superiors, his defense completely collapses in a public setting.
Oh, wow.
He couldn't possibly defend himself in open court without violating his oath, exposing ongoing national security operations, burning foreign assets, and creating a massive diplomatic incident.
So he's trapped in a catch-22.
Totally trapped.
If he stays quiet and relies on these flimsy hoarder excuses, he looks guilty of treason, hoarding documents, and sneaking off to Morocco. But if he speaks up and explains the actual arrangement to clear his name, he actually commits treason by revealing classified operational methods to the public.
Exactly.
It really begs the question, how can a public court of law, which relies on transparency, linear timelines, and undeniable physical proof, possibly judge a case that operates entirely in the shadows of deception and compartmentalization?
It fundamentally struggles to do so. And that is why the verdict ended up exactly where it did.
Right.
When the shadow world collides with the public legal system, the public court must adhere to its strict standards. The court essentially said, we will punish you for what we can unequivocally prove, which is mishandling physical documents, but we will not guess at your motives, and we will not convict on suspicion.
It's a fascinating outcome, and honestly, a bit unsettling.
Yep.
What was billed by prosecutors as the biggest espionage scandal since World War II fizzled out into a mere slap on the wrist for bringing work home.
Yeah, quite the anticlimax.
And I think that's something really important for you as a listener to reflect on. How much do you value the strict rule of law over the primal desire for national security?
Such a tough balance.
We all want spies caught. We all want our state secrets protected from foreign adversaries. But this case proves that the justice system demands hard physical evidence, not just highly suspicious patterns of behavior.
Right.
And as frustrating as that might be for the intelligence agencies who know what they saw, that strict standard of proof protects us all from being convicted on assumptions, even when the suspect is an intelligence agent caught with state secrets in his luggage.
This raises an important question, one that lingers long after the courtroom doors have closed.
What's that?
If Abdel LM truly was a master spy working for Morocco, did he just completely outsmart the Dutch legal system by weaponizing their own beyond a reasonable doubt standard against them? Or worse yet, if he was innocent and simply doing the messy, classified, gray zone job he was informally hired to do, did his own government publicly burn one of their greatest counterterrorism assets just because his methods couldn't withstand the harsh light of a public courtroom?
That is heavy. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narratives behind the headlines. And next time you hear a prosecutor promise an airtight case with decades of prison time, just remember the ultimate catch-22 of Abdel LM and how in the world of espionage, the greatest offense isn't always proving your innocence. Sometimes it's proving that the truth is simply too dangerous to say out loud.